Hello everybody, it's Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And this is number 180, which for those who've never played darts and aren't interested, is what they shout when people get 360s with 3 darts. And it's, is it the highest score you can get? I think it is. Anyway, yeah, 180.
I thought you were going to do that. I mean, I don't know much about darts, but that 180, it was sort of part of our life, really, over the years.
Well, we used to go and play darts extraordinarily badly with one of my brothers.
Well, he was quite good.
Well, he was quite good, yeah. But, yes, that's right. And I can't remember anyone ever getting a 180. But there was a lot of passion in it. I know that. It really was.
Well, talking about passion, I mean, this has been another week. Another week in the world, hasn't it, where passions have been running pretty high. People are beginning to feel very, very strongly, and it's quite polarizing. And it reminded me a little bit, my own thoughts. Do you remember that game? People who listen to us, maybe from Australia, maybe from Germany, whatever, may not have heard of this game.
Well, yeah, they probably had their own version. I think you're thinking of Runaround, aren't you?
Well, it's either Runaround or Runabout. I think you're right, Runaround. Yeah. Well, the whole idea of the game, and it was for young people, wasn't it? Kids, really. Yeah. And they were asked a question, and they chose to go into a particular corner.
They had to run to one place, number 1, 2, or 3, which they thought was the answer, which was up on the board there.
But the important thing is they were then given a chance to swap places with them to another group, weren't they? Yeah. And that is what I mean. Wasn't there a horn or a blast, a sort of siren-y thing?
That's right. Yeah,
and they had just a moment to change. Yeah. And I think that's how a lot of us are at the moment, really. You run into one corner, you read something, you think something, you see something, absolutely sure they're right. And the
problem with that game, I remember very well, was that there might be, every now and then, one child who knew the answer, ran to the right one, the others all ran to the other two, and the one who was right lost his or her nerve, and ran to join the others.
Well, that's right.
So there's a bit of that in what's in the air at the moment
as well. But I think there is a bit of that. Yeah. You hear an argument for total ceasefire, and you think, of course, that's right. Yeah. And then you hear an argument about that meaning that you're leaving a terrorist thingy in place, and you think, of course, they're right. And in the middle of it, people are dying and children are dying, and the hostages are still not released as we're talking this evening. Hopefully some of them will be. But it's pretty chaotic in one's mind, isn't it? Trying to know where you fit, where you sit, where you are.
Well, that's right. Also, because not everybody has the same specific moral stance as others.
That's true too.
So you look at something and you think, surely no one is going to defend that.
Yeah.
But then they do, and suddenly you realise you're in a different place, and
they do quite passionately or quite strongly.
And just seeing children with blood on their faces, screaming about what's happened to them and their families, and suddenly you don't care where they are or what the difference is, and all you want is for somebody who has the power to do it to stop the conflict and rescue these poor kids and their families. It's just, but you're right.
Yeah.
It's you get torn to pieces in your perception.
Well,
of it,
interestingly, in the middle of this week, I read an article, and you read it after me, didn't you? And I'm going to pronounce her name absolutely wrong, because I have no idea how it's pronounced, but it's somebody called Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Ayaan. That's the main thing, really. The reason it so struck me is that she, through her life, has really lurched from one thing to another, trying to find meaning. To one point, because she's a Muslim, and at one point she joined the Muslim Brotherhood, which meant she made a decision to wear a burqa. She followed the rules meticulously, and it wasn't right. It was too simplistic, too authoritarian. So then she moves does a massive swing into becoming a total atheist. She will have nothing to do with the things that are churning her up. So she listens to Bernard Russell, and she likes what he says, that religion is rooted in fear of the mysterious, fear of defeat, fear of death. That's what she's going to be, nothing. And she ends up in a real pickle because of that, because that's torn her away from everything that had meaning. And finally she goes to a counsellor who says, I think you're spiritually bankrupt.
Yeah, that's an interesting phrase.
I think so, and
Yeah.
we'll come back to that in a minute, because what I was going to say, and I don't know what you think about this, but she then quotes G.K. Chesterton. Now, you probably know everything G.K. Chesterton has written. I know.
No, I don't. I don't. He's just one of my my heroes as a writer.
What he wrote about atheism is when people choose not to believe in God, they do not thereafter believe in nothing. They then become capable of believing in anything.
Yeah, that sounds like him. But of course it does work backwards, the other way, doesn't it? I mean, some people from a Christian background have become Muslims, including.
This really wasn't talking.
No. I understand that, but I'm just making the point that it.
Yes, of course.
When people get into this spiritually bankrupt phase of their lives, they're looking for something.
Yes.
That will fill a gap that nothing else will fill.
That's right.
And so you might go in all manner of directions.
That's right. I mean, you blank it out because you'd want nothing more to do with it. And to some extent, I feel like that about the news at the moment every now and then. I think I just want to watch the repair shop.
Yes,
I want to see things being made better.
To see a small boat being mended.
I do,
yes.
and I want to see somebody joyful because something that mattered to them has been mended.
I know.
And I think that echoes the way a lot of people are. But it did make me think, we can be so critical about people being passionate about a particular sport, prepared to go to the lengths of the world to see their team play or whatever. But they've connected with something that gives them a sense of being alive.
Yeah. And do you think people sacrifice other elements of their perception in order to really become part of whatever it is that they found? I mean, do people dump things and say, well, I used to feel that and think that and have that and approve of this and disapprove of that, but I feel something drawing me in and making me feel I belong.
Yes, I'm sure that's so. Yeah. You talk about dumping. I mean, if you're talking football, they dump the manager pretty quickly if it's not fulfilling their desire to have a value, to be important. The connection with something that is much bigger than them is a big draw, isn't it? It stops them being the one who's alone in a corner. They join the group who are in what they see as the winning corner. Really,
it was one of the pretty well solid mantras of my early life in the church. I mean, there were lots of them, and they're not all bad, but some got a bit rusty. But where one of them was that there is a God-shaped hole in everybody, and of course.
And you think that is just a mantra?
Well, no. When I don't know. When you were in a Christian group, but they meant. It's a Christian-shaped hole, of course, because that's what they were teaching. Yeah. But I think we just, as teenagers, simply accepted that. But I think you're right there. That there seems to be. How can you know for sure? There seems to be a yearning in people for something that can't be defined in any other way.
Well, that's why I found it interesting reading that Bertrand Russell had said that religion is rooted in fear of the mysterious. I mean, I think that spiritual dimension, and this is not just talking Christianity, actually, the yearning for something more, if you like, the yearning for meaning. I don't think that is a fear of the mysterious. I think that's a yearning to capture something that is beyond us, that is bigger than us, that is mysterious, if you like. I mean, why do people want to explore space? so much as many people do, because there's something unattainable there.
I think Bertrand Russell's points are quite old-fashioned, really. I think what were they again? I mean, one was the mystery.
Well, fear of mystery. Fear of
far from being
defeat and
frightened
fear of death.
mystery, I'm absolutely enthralled by the mystery of it all. Am I frightened of death? And I'm frightened of dying. I don't know about death. And what was the other one? The
well, just fear of everything, really. Fear of defeat, which I thought was interesting.
Well, actually, there again, you see, I mean, as you grow up, if you grow up, I became a Christian when I was 16, which is very young, and I didn't even know what it meant.
And you desperately wanted to belong to something, so that, yeah.
But as time went by, you take out these things and sift them one by one, the things that were what you automatically believed or decided to assent to. And I mentioned the other day, I think when we were doing one of our recordings here, that, you know, how I used to worry that God didn't come home.
Yes, you said He was very there at church.
And now I almost rather stay at home to meet God, although I love being with people in church. But I'll just tell you another Chesterton quote, which is quite interesting.
Come on then.
Well, Chesterton said, I want you to tell me what you think is the end of this was, right?
Right.
He said, atheism is like a maze without a what? Now, there are two options, obvious options. One is a centre and one is an exit.
Can you say it again then?
Atheism is
like a
maze without a what?
Oh, I see.
I wonder what other people who are listening think you might have said.
A maze. I don't know, Adrian, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe an exit. No, and the centre? No,
well,
I don't know.
Actually,
either or. I'm running. I'm doing my runaround. The klaxon has gone, and I'm running from corner to corner, Adrian.
Yes. Well, your first thing was at the centre, was what he said, because I think within the metaphor he was using, you were hunting for something in the middle of what seemed confusing to you. And you needed to find something that would make it worthwhile to go through those difficult times. Whereas if you're hunting for an exit, maybe you end up spiritually bankrupt. I don't know. But it's always interested me because I've never quite been able to work out what is the actual answer to that, about the whole that metaphor. But I do find it very interesting.
Oh gosh. Yes. I mean, I know one of the things you've talked about quite a lot is, and certainly this article, this woman really went down a road that we maybe would feel that we're travelling on. I mean, she has become a Christian, but she said that what was so remarkable was when she tried to find who was it who stood for, or that everything that she dreamed of following, everything that made sense to her, she ended up back in the story of Jesus, because of being, the way he was with people, the way he looked at life, the way he believed in people, not as they were, but as they could be, but with the steps to do it again and again and again. Of
course, Jesus is a respected prophet in the Muslim world.
Yeah,
I believe.
Absolutely. But I think now more than that for her.
Yeah.
And I think more and more that for us. I think we've shed so many things over the years, really. The things that, the how-tos and the should-Is and shouldn't-Is and some of the guilt.
Yeah, I think we don't need to battle in most of the battlegrounds that we would have been fighting in the old days. Which makes it very different. I tell you one thing that did occur to me over all this, though, is that I think that the word bankruptcy is very good. People sometimes end up feeling poverty-stricken.
Yes.
Because they had so much and they had a rich experience, and as she obviously did, and then it was lost.
Or they thought they would, if they tried harder, they would have that experience, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking, though, more of the rich sweetness of thinking you've discovered something that is wonderful. and pursuing it for possibly quite a long time. But then suddenly, and we've talked about, the fall of heroes recently lot, suddenly the agency of your change loses all credibility in your eyes. It might be a church system, it might be an individual who you trusted and loved, it might be could be almost anything. But the place or the people or the community that made you feel that, rescued you probably, and often from something, has lost its stature, and therefore you feel bankrupted. There is a real problem with dumping the message with the messenger, I think. And we know, I've known a few people who have walked sadly away from any sense of faith because the place where they got it from no longer has any credibility.
We do, but we also know people who are finding their own way that is, if you like, as we talked about a while ago, a way less travelled. It's more complicated and rockier and may not get somewhere as neatly as they would like, but at least they've shed a lot of things and they're trying to find something much more. We've just got to keep thinking at the moment, haven't we, and allowing ourselves to feel, not becoming numbed by what's going on, not leaping on to. And one of the things that I also felt about the news this week is there was a lot of talk about popularist leaders, people who say the things people want to hear but with no substance, and that's becoming very frightening, I think. We saw it in America, but we're seeing it in Argentina and other places where the leaders actually do not necessarily have the depth or experience, but they sound great and people want to be in their corner because they can hide behind that person and feel there's somebody who sounds great and who is promising everything.
I suppose that's interesting in the context of the Christian faith, because I know sometimes people in other faiths get very angry if people criticize the people who were the founders of their faith or whatever. The thing about Jesus is he was killed in the end. He had failed in many ways and lost most of his followers, and attracted a huge amount of criticism. And in the end, when he could have possibly talked himself out of what was going to happen, went ahead with it, and in the end was killed. And there is something very chewy in the middle of the whole, especially at autumn time, whole idea of death.
But there was resurrection, and
produces resurrection.
That we've talked before about how Paul always preached the crucifixion, because if you miss that out and you just talk about resurrection, then that's so superficial and jolly, but it doesn't capture what happened. But the fact does remain that we do believe he rose again. And without that, I can't quite imagine, the next bit of the story, the fact that the disciples met him, then he went back to heaven, then they were told to wait, and then the Holy Spirit came.
I had a very interesting conversation with a friend the other day. He was talking about love and power, and he was saying that he felt in the past he'd wanted to have power, and he now realised that was wrong, and love was the important thing. He's a Christian minister, in fact. Now he sees, and actually that isn't so. As I said to him, interesting the progress of the church. That the disciples were sent to sit in a room with no idea of what would happen. And possibly saying to each other, but why are we here? What are we doing? And it wasn't actually until some strange power came that gave them words and knowledge that they wouldn't otherwise have had, that they were able to be of any use at all. So you can have power, but what you can't do is own it. And one of the things that has brought people down in not just in the Christian church but all many churches is somebody suddenly thinking, I like this power thing, I think I'll go for this.
Well, maybe not quite as consciously at that. I mean, I think we can all get drawn into things, really.
Do you know, someone has said to me recently, wrote and said, you know, what are the problems with satire? I mean, the problem for me with doing satire all this time has been that most of the most useful things I've done, I've found in me, the things that are wrong, the things that go wrong.
Yes.
And if you deny
a whole
those,
career in falling flat on your face.
Exactly, a whole career in falling flat on my face. And I immensely value the fact that I've got really nervous about power because I don't know how I would handle it if I had it. But I do know that, or I think I know, that love and power go together. Love is hugely important, but there's got to be something else, and I would feel spiritually bankrupt if I thought that all there was being as nice as you can be to people. And I know some people would say, no, that's wrong. You know, it's very good to be like that.
Well, it would be great to hear if any of these things, and especially the things we quoted out of the article, trigger off any thoughts in you. I mean, it was a great stabilizing thing for us in the middle of the mayhem, wasn't it? To read something so rational,
was very, very
and
interesting. I'm really grateful.
Rational and passionate.
Grateful to her for
possible to be both.
For expressing that so clearly. Yeah, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.